Ba da ba da ba. Shabby babbity ba. Hello. Hello, 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 hello. Ba da ba 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 da. All right, everybody, live stream. Here we go. Ba 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 da. Shabby ba. Well, here we are again, another week. My computer, I think, is about to explode. The fan on this thing is going so hot. Probably because I have 15,000 Photoshop windows open. Probably because I'm trying to live stream from a dog shit laptop. All these things play into it. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you're here for the live stream. Thanks for checking it out. Again, a quick reminder before we get going. If you are going to have a question, use the YouTube chat, right? If you don't know where the YouTube chat is, leave a comment in the Patreon chat and I'm sure someone can direct you. If you don't know how to find a YouTube chat, though, you're probably in trouble. So direct your questions there. Trying to get through some of this stuff because we got a lot of shots today, actually, from what I think is a great project. And talk about doing a lot of stuff with very minimal resources, at least from the sounds of it. Again, I don't know too much about the project, but just looking at the stills and seeing what people can get from this stuff, it's pretty wild. And so that's what we're going to be looking at today in the project. And I think you saw a little bit of a tease, but there's the first shot. This is my favorite shot of the ad. This one is shot by someone. Put it in the comments. I forget who it was actually shot by. Let me find out. Terrence. This one was shot by Terrence. So hopefully Terrence is in the chat today. If he's not in the chat, I'm sure you can ask questions on Patreon to get the full extent of what it was shot on and the lenses, because I know there's an interesting story about shooting on some sort of homemade anamorphic or a version of that. But really good stuff. Really good. I mean, apart from the lenses, which has a very unique look, and there seems to be some sort of black pro-mist quality about the grade. Just the idea and the ability to light in a space that we're going to be talking about is real tricky and really good. So that's what we're going to get into today. Other stuff on the docket. Actually, this is I'm going to be on a podcast. Well, not even a podcast. Yeah, it is a podcast. I'm going to be on a podcast that, what is the name of the guy that does the podcast? It is Ilya Friedman, which is, I think it's the cinematography podcast. And I don't know if they've ever listened to an episode that we do here, but I'm going to be on it talking about the Oscar nominations and the best cinematography nods. Now, I am not a movie person at all. I am, yes, I know that's weird, but I will just fall asleep at the drop of a hat. And if it's dark in the theater, I mean, I saw Blade Runner and I made it through the entire Blade Runner, which was an accomplishment. But I've said many times, I'm a trailer person. You show me a trailer, I get it. I'll go in, I'll watch 10 minutes and I'll see the idea. The idea of sitting through an entire movie is not super appealing to me. But I'm going to be talking about the Oscar nominations. So I'm about to go on, 3 or 4 days of binge watching potentially Oscar nominated movies, or else I'm going to have absolutely nothing to talk about. And it's kind of interesting because it's between the cinematography podcast guys, which is, I think, Ilya and I can't remember the other host's name, and then Ben Consoli from the Go Creative show. So we're going to see how it goes. I don't know how much input I can provide, but I'll definitely be sharing which one I think's probably got the best chance to win and doesn't look like ass. I don't know why someone would want to hear me say that, but that's what we're going to do. So let's get into the questions here before we go too far. And this is just from the Patreon site I put up yesterday when I put the schedule out. If you do have any specific questions, that is the spot to ask. So actually, I didn't even ask if you guys can hear me. I'm just assuming if people aren't writing or emojiing in the chat dog shit that someone can hear me. So I trust you that you would tell me. Okay, so first up, we got one from Peter Chapman. How do you handle a shoot day where you know the timeline is going to be crazy and you keep a sane crew? I don't know. I never really have. I'm not a very anxious person. I'm very hard to get stressed out. And when things are moving fast, you just move faster. In terms of keeping a sane crew, crews generally, as you move up the ladder, crews will know and they'll be professional enough to, if you need to pick up the pace, they will have already picked up the pace before you realize you have to. You know what I mean? If you're working with a bunch of student filmmakers and you're the one person, like especially doing short films, there's always that one person, generally it's the director, who's also the producer, who's probably also shooting the thing, and they're racing around like a headless chicken. trying to get all these shots done, and no one around them is helping or moving because they simply don't have the skills or they don't have the experience to know where they can slot in. But as you move higher and higher up the ranks of crew and working with more experienced crews, a lot of the times they'll pick it up on their own. They know, like, if you're not running around adjusting the lights and saying, hey, come on, somebody help me. You're just like, fuck, dude, we got to get through this shot now. We need solutions. And rather than, keeping them sane, a lot of the time it's the other way around. You try and, as the head of the department, you try and facilitate the best working environment that you can. And we've had a whole bunch of different people on the podcast talk about working with crews and what they like to do, and allowing people the space to be creative in their own endeavors, whether it's the gaffer, the best boy, or the ACs. Find places in the project where they can slot in. And as soon as they take ownership of that role, you're going to find better results along the way. Like, I am not a screamer. If something is going wrong, have I blown up on set? I have blown up on set, but not many times, right? And this is just after I said I'm fairly level-headed. I have lost my shit, essentially, more so rather than, due to speed or time constraints, just due to miscommunication and more so language barrier of saying whatever you're doing. And generally it comes down to the lighting team, not so much directed upwards of the director, but I've had my moments. But a lot of the time, if you're working with a new lighting team, and it's like, guys, I'm happy for you to interpret whatever I say and make it, put your own spin on it, and I'll give you that shot. But if it doesn't look like I want it to look, you can't be upset when I chime in with my own solutions. And my solutions are probably going to be a lot more work than your solutions. Everybody, again, it's all depending on the crew. There is a tendency sometimes to go with the easiest way to get a job done. If you ask for, I need a big soft source over here, and you ask some crews, maybe they put up, a little 6x, and they put up, some little shitty light, and it's like, ooh, let's see if it works. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to be soft enough. And then you say, when they put it up, that is not soft enough. I don't know what you've done there, but should we make it softer? And then, you look at the crew and you're like, should we try and make it any softer? And they go, well, it's going to be tricky to make it softer. And you're just like, fuck, dude, it's easy. Just put it through a bigger fabric. That's all you have to do. Yeah, but then we got to take down the thing. It's like, yeah, well, you fucked up the first time. So I'm not making your job harder. You just tried to shortcut the first time. So that's where you get some cinematographers are like, no, this is how you do it. This is what I want over there, blah, blah, blah. I'm still of the mind that a lot of the times you get surprised. A lot of the time you say, can bring in something soft over here. I don't know what it's going to be. And then we would go with something over here. And you get there and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have used that thing, or I wouldn't have put that there. But it's a good point. But especially when you're just starting out a commercial and you're working with new people, it's like you give them that first setup. And if you're like, oh, fuck, where's this guy going? Like, this is, you make your judgment right then, whether or not it's going to be good or bad, and then you sort of dictate it. But the whole, going back to the original question of keeping sane and keeping a fast pace moving, when you get to that certain level, there are so many other people responsible for the time besides you. You are just one cog in the wheel, and you do your best to be lit as quickly as possible, and you start thinking ahead. So how you can, basically, you just don't want to be the anchor of any project. There's always going to be some anchor, whether it's art department or whether it's production design or wardrobe or makeup. Someone's always going to be the anchor slowing you down. You just don't want that to be you. So you want to be, you're the director's right-hand man. You're someone who's supposed to be like, listen, we can get all this stuff if we do all these things, and I've taken care of all this and this and this and this and this, and I've come up with solutions. But, you can't work your magic. If people start to get shitty, especially crew, that is the one thing that will make for a not fun experience, is it only takes one crew member to be shitty, and the whole thing goes down the drain. That vibe will spread through everyone. And if one person's like, well, like if we set up a shot, this happens quite a bit. You set up a shot, you put the 40 mil on, you get the whole matte box on there, you get all your filters in there, you get everything set up, you're happy. The focus puller comes and he gets his marks, and you run through the whole thing, and then word trickles back to the tent or to the director, and they're like, oh, you go through a few takes and you're like, you just don't, I'm not really feeling this focal length, or I'm not really feeling this composition. Let's just mix it up, and they'll come up with an idea. So separate from yourself. and they'll say like, what if we come over here and just go on a slightly longer lens? You'll find that some people, depending on what hour in the day it is, some people will start to get like huffy and puffy, and that is the worst. When you get somebody that isn't voicing their opinion and it's just like immediately in a foul mood, you just want to punch them in the face. And that's what you have to nip in the bud immediately. Like, I am not shy about saying, listen, I don't know what your attitude problem is, but you need to adjust it now, because you're bringing down the whole fucking set, and it's a drag, and no one wants to be around you, and you're poisoning this whole thing. I don't mind saying that, right? Again, coming from someone who claims to be low key and calm, I can sense now, and you get used to it. Like, that is so easy to poison what is happening on a film set. So I'd say try and you plan ahead. If the schedule is crowded, you plan ahead and you talk to the director and work it out. But in terms of keeping the crew happy, it's like, yeah, I'm responsible for you, but I'm not a babysitter. Like, you come to work, you're getting paid. Don't be a douchebag. And if you are a douchebag, you're probably not going to get another job from me, because the cinematographer is responsible for hiring everyone in your department. If you don't like someone, you just say, listen, dude, you're being a tool. Either fix it or you're gone. I don't know. I've never actually fired anybody on the actual day, but certainly you work with people and you're like, mental note, never going to work with that person again. So that goes for that schedule. Okay. Fuck, that was a long-winded answer for nothing. Okay. I'm trying to sell our advertising agency on the importance of having higher powered light, like a 5K. Blah, blah, blah. And typically we don't rent gear. How could I best express the production value of higher output lights? I don't know how you sell that, other than, well, what are you going to do? Like, one high-powered light is not really going to make much of a difference. You got to have the people that know how to operate it, and you got to move the thing around. Like, having lights, especially on the lower budget side of things, having lights almost works against you, because then you start thinking about how I'm going to use this thing, as opposed to dealing with the limitations. Like, one 5K is, I assume you're talking about a tungsten 5K. I don't know what you would do with the tungsten 5K. Unless it was in some sort of studio and you wanted, I don't know. Like, one single light doesn't really make sense for, for what modern cameras are capable of, right? If you're looking to shape the way that you work and change the lighting that you do, now with such sensitive cameras, I would be looking at quicker to place instruments, especially if you're in a small or limited crew, like light mats. Those things, you can chuck them up anywhere and they will immediately change the mood. If you have 4x4 floppies, you have some Duvetine, some 12x12 Duvetine, you can pin those up real quick. You can block out windows. You can do all sorts of stuff, and then you just tape the light mat somewhere, and then you can have easy access to dim it down. Like, the more gack you put on stuff, the less likely you'll use it. I've talked about it in photography. I am a super, super lazy photographer. I will, if the camera's heavy or if the camera's, not user-friendly to use, I just won't use it. And that's the same with gear, right? Like, if you don't have hands on deck, the more of a hassle it is to set up, like a 5K, it's a pain in the ass. I don't know if I would ever use it, and I don't know how much production value it would bring, right? You probably get more production value out of doing another day's location scout, trying to find somewhere that actually fits what you're trying to do and trying to be there at the right time. You look on Vimeo, there's countless short films, or those, sort of drama, moody documentary things where the lighting is amazing because they've gone out of their way and sourced the right locations at the right time. You may not have that ability with what you're doing, but I don't know if one big light is going to solve it. So I'd probably say sink my money somewhere else. Okay, this one's from Luke. Hey, Patrick. How would you light a day exterior at midday on a clear, sunny day, sun right above, if you absolutely had to? Let's just say the producer shit the bed. Well, it depends on whether or not you like the producer or whether or not you want to do a good job. You could just turn on the camera and say, this is what you get. If you had a battle with the person and they didn't listen to you, and you were a dickhead, you could probably just say, well, this is what you get. But if you're trying to do something nice and you're trying to make it look good, and it was just a scheduling error that made that scenario happen, I would still be, even at noon, even if the sun is directly overhead, you can find areas, especially backgrounds, that will give you more shadow than other areas, right? I'm imagining we're not in some open field where there's nothing in shadow. I would try and find something in shadow. And then the classic way to do it, which Shane Hurlbut used to have, I don't know if it's still around, he used to have a really good tutorial on this idea, which is doing the wide shots early in the morning, and then you move in for the close-ups as the sun goes higher and higher, because it's much easier to affect a very small part of the frame. So if we're talking about a close-up at high noon, those are quite easy, because essentially all you need to do is take away the sun. A lot of the times, you're not going to take away with a solid piece of black. You're just going to knock it down tremendously, depending on the angle that it has to match everything else. But you knock that level down with an overhead or silk or something over the top of the talent, and then you either bounce, depending on, if the sun is directly overhead, you can still get an angled 12 by 12 to punch in quite a bit of level on a sunny day. The trick is, right, you've got the overhead, so that's taking away the harshness and the shadows underneath the eyes. Then you've got the bounce coming in. The trick, as the sun gets higher with the bounce, is to not make it feel like it's coming up someone's nose, right? So a lot of the times you have to raise the 12 by or whatever you're bouncing with, you have to raise it to almost just underneath the overhead. Whatever the overhead is, if you just have the 12 by 12 at ground level and someone's standing at ground level and it's angled so that it's hitting them, this gigantic wash of light is going to be hitting them, of course, depending on how close it is relative to the talent. So to avoid that, a lot of the times, you can't face it forward like I would normally have a 4 by poly, because the sun is the angle of the sun. It won't work. So a lot of the times what you have to do is raise it up and then just take that bounce down, as opposed to coming down here and bouncing straight into the person. So it makes a big difference. Then if you're talking about shape and whatever it is you're matching to, you still want that contrast. So probably, let's say it's a 12 by 12 setup. It's just a single shot of a woman, and she's sitting there and she's having some sort of conversation that you filmed earlier in a wide shot. I'd say overhead, black wrap on the 12 by 12 wraparound on the fill side to create some contrast. Bouncing either, a lot of the time, sometimes depending on the level of the sun in the background and what you found, a lot of the time you can either mirror board into a 12 by, so into like a quarter grid or a highlight where you mirror board in, or you can just use like a 12 by ultra bounce, and like I said, angle it, bounce that light in, and then back it off to make it feel normal. Really, and I think we've been seeing this over the past few episodes. I don't know if I'm just noticing more because that's where I'm at, or if this has always been the case. It is all about that fine balance. Like, that is what separates Roger Deakins' bounce work from some dog shit on Vimeo, right? It's the balance of saying that is too much, or just that little angle will make all the difference in the world, or we'll just get rid of that little catch light that wouldn't make sense in the middle of the day. Those little tiny things, it's all about. And the only way that you can actually do it the only way that you can perfect that balance is by getting out there and going like, oh, Jesus. Like with the 12 by, like that looks like dog shit. And then you go back to the, your house and you look at the footage and you're like, man, that should have been just a little bit higher. So you keep trying and trying and trying. I think I've said on the podcast before, one of the biggest mistakes that I've made, actually, this is probably the biggest mistake that I've made, is you'll be doing a day exterior shot and you'll be bouncing, you get all these levels right, but there's just not enough level, or there's just not enough, there's not enough level, or there's not enough contrast. And I did it once and I was like, Jesus, I'm never doing that again. And I think I talked about it here, where I just wanted to add more level, and it was a windy day. The 12 by 12s are all, locked in and tied down. And I was like, shit, we can either take 15 minutes and move all this shit and make it look nice, or we can just add some more level some other way. And, you throw out the idea and out comes the 4x4 poly, and it just looks terrible. It looks so sourcey. It looks like someone is holding a 4x4 floppy, and all of a sudden there's just level coming out of nowhere, right? It's that balance that makes stuff look good. So I would say you want the biggest stuff you can get outside to make it feel natural and of a piece, and you want to take away the sun that's giving you dog shit. You want to create contrast with the 12 by black, and then you want to make sure that key feels natural. You can't have it feeling like a spotlight. Okay. How often do you find yourself using haze on set? I can imagine using just a small amount of haze can make a big difference to the look and the feel of the scene. What are your thoughts and experience? Yeah, haze is a good thing. Haze takes down the contrast, especially on the old red stuff. Just not having that stop or two in the highlights. Haze is really good for just bringing that down, but it's also sort of part of the look now, right? You can see there are a couple very famous haze DPs out there, but done just right, you shouldn't see it. You should just feel it. It should feel like sort of like a an eighth black pro mist or a glimmer glass feel. It should just be there. There are times, especially when you're down on crew, where if you don't have someone in art department manning that hazer, it can get away from you, and then matching can be a bit tough. But you know, it all depends on the feel of the piece. The lower contrast is nice, and it's probably more important for cameras that don't have quite the dynamic range. A lot of the low contrast stuff on the Alexa you can do afterwards just by virtue of how thick the negative is. But it does change the light sources and the spread. And I would say that little bit that you can't actually see is the best version of haze. As soon as you can see it, I sort of am anti. But I use it all the time. So pretty much anytime I can get a job that has a hazer, you never know, right? It's just like having diopters or glimmer glass or black pro mist. It's like you never know when you could add that little bit extra, where it could just make that shot just that little bit cooler. So I would say, yeah, just have someone manning it and knowing what they're doing, and someone keeping an eye on it, because you go and talk to the director for 2 minutes in between, and you come back and, you know, Joe Yahoo has been hitting the hazer like it's his job, and it looks like shit, and then you gotta wait 15 minutes and everyone blames you. So something to look out for. Okay, that's enough. Let's get into actually, I'll check the chat, make sure there's no questions. Okay, here we go. What is the best way to get in contact with you and send projects? Yeah, just send it through Patreon message, Daniel. Send it through the old Patreon message. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's get into it. Here we go. This is some good stuff. Jesus. I like it. And, whoops. This one, I think, like I said, I think is from Terrence. And shot on the Ursa Mini, at least that's the best I could tell, and with some sort of concoction of anamorphic still lens combined with Leica R lenses. But we won't talk about that so much. This is just good. Like this shot is by far my favorite. And this is an example of what we were just talking about, of setting everything to feel like it is of a piece. You know, like all of this feels, there is nothing that grossly stands out in any of these things. It just feels like the mood and exactly where this should be sitting. Like this little highlight on the skin, bringing her out versus a level back here. You're getting interesting light to dark to light to dark to light to dark. You're also getting all of these interesting framing things. Like you've got the door handle here. You've got the staircase that's going up. All of these things are really interesting, and they just make you look exactly where Terrence wants you to look. You know, we want to be staring directly at this girl, let alone, you know, 90% of the job is having good stuff and cool stuff to look at. And this is a cool little unique house. This entire ad is in a cool little spot. And this wallpaper plays a lot, and the angle of the photos, they help. You know, they're going along with the staircase. All very easy stuff. Even the wardrobe is a good choice. And there's just that softness and that little glow, which does sort of look, either it's haze or it's some sort of, you know, black pro mist quality to this, where the contrast is lessened. But this was by far my favorite shot. And again, because it feels like how I would want a hallway to feel. You know, it feels like there is enough level back there, but there's still shape. It's not flat. There's some depth. There's some uniqueness to the viewing point. And, you know, I would say if I was on set and I was looking at this, I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, we're ready. Okay, so that's that one. Next up, we got this sort of day interior. And I don't know the budget to this particular ad, but I would say that judging from a few of these stills, the hardest part about selling location daytime stuff is if you don't have the budget for lights from the outside, the real battle becomes, how do you flag off the inside lights, get them far enough away from people so that the exposure change as the light falls off isn't so great that it looks really bad. Like, I don't know how many people would pick that up, but the very first thing that I'm looking at are those things, right? That's sort of what separates your budget differences, and that's what you should be looking out for if you are low budget. So here we got a shot of this girl. She's laying down. Again, interesting framing. I like the angle across. I like the upside down factor. I like you've got things here, you got things there. You got the wardrobe, and the whole palette is quite nice. I like the shape coming from this way. Whatever lamp is over here is drawing this shadow over here, and this skin is right where everything is sitting throughout the entire ad. So it's, you know, it's a DP and a colorist issue, but it really does feel, each shot feels like it fits into all the rest, and you can't really go wrong here. I imagine this is just judging from what we'll see in a second, the other photos. I imagine this is just some sort of either 4x4 frame over here, or a Kino or something, giving us this little level here, and that's it, right? Very simple and basic, but it just feels like it could be a realistic light in a bedroom, and that's exactly what you're going for. Okay, this is the example of exactly what I was talking about. So you've got an exterior shot, or you've got an interior shot where you're looking out the window, right? You're in somewhere in, you know, some dreary northern hemisphere, probably England or something, area where you're probably not going to get blown out highlights out the window. There's not mega sun, but you've still got this idea for a certain level during the ad. And this is where it gets really tricky with the budgets, because you can certainly see that this wall really hot, this shadow really pronounced. All these shadows coming this way means that you've got a big lamp, or you've got not even a big lamp really. It just, whatever lamp you've got, it's over there. You know, it's over on the right hand side. And I don't know if this much of a directional light makes sense, having viewed the outside. You know, like if you were on a big budget, I'd say you have a 18K. It depends if you want it bright, but you'd have an 18 out the window through a little frame, and then that would be shining sort of towards this mirror. It would be backlit, and then you'd probably, right, if the 18 was giving you your room ambient and your edge on this thing to get her lit up, right? You wouldn't want her lit up by the 18K, or else it would have to be in shot. It'd have to be here to hit her. So to get there, you'd probably 18 just out of the window, give it some level, and then inside from up above, up here, you'd probably, you know, light matte or Kino or whatever way you want to get level, and you'd probably place it on the same angle as the 18, like this window was larger, but just above frame pointing down, and then trying to even it out on her face so it didn't feel like it was coming down. You know, it would take some finagling with, but essentially what you would be doing is trying to sell that this whole wash was a lot longer than just pointing this light down. In here, in this situation where you don't have the cash for that, you got to put the light inside. I'd say the only thing that you could probably do differently here is try and smush this light into this corner as much as you can, so that it's coming this way as much as you can, you know. And I'm sure you tried your best to do that, but you'd almost want it to appear like there's another window just here, right? That's the look that I'd be going for, rather than having another window on the opposite wall, so on a perpendicular wall, like back here, which is what it feels like now. And in this situation, if you didn't have crew and you didn't have budget, I'd say just to feather this level, like if we do this, and then, oops, we'll just invert it, come back here, make it bigger. Probably not the brush for this, but you get what I'm talking about, right? You're just gonna knock down this level and spread it out a little bit like that, and then, you know, just a little bit, so it's not quite as, like, this to me jumps out at me like, fuck, there's a lamp over there, whereas this is just that little bit, like just taking the edge off, right? The shadow still gives it away, but if you could flag it off or black it off, it just may make that difference where it doesn't feel quite as much like a light, right? More of a piece, but hard to do when you don't have tons and tons of cash. Here we go again. Yes, please. Now we're getting back into the good stuff, right? This is beautiful. You've got eye light, perfect little tiny little eye light in there. You've got light to dark to light to dark. You've got some shape on the face. You got good levels on the skin, nice clear eyes, and you know, you're doing your best with what could be a very flat looking image, right? You could have the lady just parked right in front of the door and it would be very two-dimensional, but just by having this little door opening just to nothing, right? It's white back there. It's nothing. It makes the biggest difference, right? And this girl, she sort of steps into the light, and it's a really beautiful shot and a beautiful moment. and a nice color job, and also a nice shooting job, right? Because this is an example of, look at her skin level versus the wall level, right? That's probably a grade thing, right? That this door, I imagine, in real life would be a lot hotter because I'm assuming it's a white door. She's got very light Caucasian skin. I imagine those would be around the same level if you're pumping a light this way. I don't know how you would keep it off and keep her that hot. I'm assuming that's a grade thing, but still the idea is there. And you have to, even though you're going to do something like this in the grade, you still have to be planning for it. And you still have to have the foresight to be like, okay, yeah, it looks a little bit shit over there now, but we'll be able to clean that up later and quite quickly. So very cool shot, this one. This whole thing, I really like the whole ad. Okay, this is again, same thing. We've talked about it before. You can see out the window, but you've got these lines here that give away that there is a bit of brightness going in. Her hair is a lot hotter than over here. Not much you can do about it. I like the composition. Like all the composition in these shots is really, really good. This is, the frame is filled. It doesn't feel empty. It feels like all of these lines are leading us to somewhere interesting. The costume and the set decoration is really cool as well. I don't know if you had a big team on this, but it's really, really well done. And nice level on her. And again, the idea of the angle of the light is perfect, right? It's just again, if you were on a slightly bigger budget, pump Condor 18 out there, pump through the window, and then you use this as well, right? You use whatever light you're using here as well, but you're setting the mood a little bit more realistic, right? Where if you can see outside and it's a little bit gloomy, it's hard to sell these sorts of levels inside. But I like the use of the practical during the day. Having that cloth over the top of it so it doesn't completely blow out makes a big difference. And that really isn't doing anything. It's just there for looks, right? And it does look kind of cool. Like you don't notice it at first, but then it's like, oh, this light on makes sense. It's beautiful. Go with that. Okay, this is a good example of how you can get around those issues, because this is the exact same room, I think, or if it's a different room. Let's see. I don't know. I'm imagining it's the same room. Maybe they just redecorated it. Maybe it's another room. But either way, it doesn't matter, even if it's not the same room. Because what you've done here is, apart from this shadow, you've eliminated me knowing that there's some fuckery going on. Because you've eliminated me seeing that wall that's super hot, right? You can see that shadow on the ground, but nothing says that this light is inside, which I imagine it's just behind this thing. There's some sort of source poking us this way. But nothing gives it away except that shadow. And that's because you've come around this pillar. And the pillar also breaks up the frame, right? You've been hiding lots of stuff throughout the entire piece. So it all fits in and looks good. But I would say that you could almost do the same thing here if you just orbited that way and just shot just a little bit more into it, or done the same thing with the light, just poked it a little bit more this way. That would get that off the wall and make it that much easier to accomplish. These ones, not so much lighting. This is like a Norwegian dream come true, or some sort of overcast gray British day. I'm imagining we don't really get these here in Australia, where you just get this soft wash of light. Again, the composition here is the only reason I brought this one up. You're framing the entire time, adding those layers, and it is the layers that sell the whole thing, right? It's the layers that keep the interest, and perfect exposure on the skin and all that sort of stuff. But you can't really do much with lighting in a situation like this. It's more just about getting out there, making sure the level's set right, and then finding a unique way that you can add something to the piece. Okay, last one. Let's do okay, here we go. This one's challenging, and this one is a really good example of using, let's say it's not England that we're in, or Scotland, or wherever this is. Let's say we're in Australia and the sun is over here and the sun goes across the top of this building, right? Like this. You would not want to shoot it. This is when you're on location and you've got your little Sunseeker app out. You would not want to shoot this thing at afternoon. After 12 o'clock, as the sun starts to come around and hit that building in the background, that's where you don't want the sun to hit. You want the sunlight coming into this room. You don't want the sunlight hitting the background. In this situation where it's all gray and of a overcast tone, then you don't have to worry about it. But it's a good example of shooting into something that isn't super hot, and then setting the key within that mood. You know, like I said before, those inside shots where you can feel the source, it doesn't feel of a piece. Whereas this, even though, you know, we're basically setting the entire mood relative to what's happening outside, you know, to feel realistic. And I'm not sure what you've got in there for lamp, but you're getting this nice warm edge. You know, the color balance is all on point, and you're getting, again, this nice little kick onto her hair, this little sheen. So you're getting light, you're getting shadow down here, you're getting edge, and then, you know, the white in here isn't all filled in the refrigerator. I think it looks nice. It looks really, really good. And, you know, that's complicated stuff that we're getting into. You got multiple layers of ideas. You got the framing, you got the building, the three-dimensional quality to it by layering things in there. You're also layering and stacking light. You've got angles where they should be coming from. You've got a lot of upstage stuff in there. So all around, I think a really good job on a commercial that sounds like, from the budget perspective, had its challenges, but that's really, really good stuff. And the lead is very good and well suited to the environment and the location. And I don't know how much of a role you played in the location, but it's well done, and you've done well with the timing. So if there's not any other questions, I think that is going to do it. Yeah, I mean, somebody, if you've got ideas for who's going to win the Oscar, let me know, because I've only got so much time to watch these videos or these films, and I have to have something intelligent to say. I'm going to sound like a jackass. So let me know, besides Blade Runner, of course, and I will try and watch them before I record this other podcast. This week coming up, fingers crossed, we get Sam Levy on the podcast, I think is his name. Sam Levy or Levi. And he shot Lady Bird, which is cool, which is actually from the same town that I went to university in. So I went to college up near Sacramento. So I'm going to try and, yeah, well, he's coming on the podcast. So I'm excited because it looks like a cool movie. Again, I haven't seen it. I probably shouldn't tell Sam that I haven't seen it, but I'll lie. No, I'm only kidding. Okay, Shape of Water. I buy that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, that's going to do it for this week, everybody. Again, thanks for the support on Patreon. And if you do have questions, or if you do have projects that you want to go over, hopefully this is the level of everybody in the Patreon group. Because if it is, I don't know, I've stumbled onto a goldmine of cinematographers, right? This level is so high, and things are happening. I was always imagining that the people listening to this show had absolutely zero idea what they were doing, but it looks as though I was wrong and mistaken. So I'm glad that all this stuff came out. So that's going to do it. We'll see you. Hold on. Oh yeah, the photography the podcast, the photography thing. I was going to talk about this treatment and show the treatment, but unfortunately I left the drive at my office, so I don't have the physical drive that has the treatment on it, and I could send you the one that I've emailed out and we had sort of floating around online, but it's got sensitive information on it, so I want to get rid of that first. So I will try and do that in next week's live stream, where if I get enough time, I'll be able to blur everything out, and then I'll probably put it up for you so that you can see the whole treatment process. I will tell you, I know that I always knew that I never wanted to be a director, but there is something sucking. There's something so terrible about getting excited about a treatment and then not getting it, right? If you're a cinematographer and you don't get a job, it's like, well, you know, maybe you get booked for something, which I've talked about on the Made podcast before. You get booked for something and you're like, man, I can't wait to do this job. And then you realize that, you know, there were 4 other DPs booked and you got the ass, and you're like, no, it sucks. But as someone who puts in the time into a treatment, and you start finding the images, and pretty soon you start shooting it in your head, and you're like, this is going to be awesome, right? I'm talking photography only. It's like, this is going to be amazing. And then they just fucking rip it from your hands and make it into something shitty. That is bad. I can only imagine what would be worse is if you actually got the job and then they made it shitty after you had already signed on, which I'm sure happens all the time. So I will do that in the next live stream and try and get it up. So sorry about that. Okay, I saw Dunkirk. How's this? People are gonna be pissed. I saw Dunkirk on the plane when I was going to LA. I went to LA for a job just before Christmas, and I was there for a few weeks. And I saw it on the plane. I mean, it looked good. I remember people being pissed about the varying exposure changes between shot and shot and the matching. I didn't see it at all. probably because it was a, you know, a 360p screen in some shitty little airplane. But it was good. You know, I liked the visuals of it. So, okay. This is it. Last one, Chad. On your waveform or false color, where do you expose your skin tones? 40 and 60. Also in a darker scene like a nighttime bed, do you still? No, I go lower. So if you're in a nighttime scene, you want to go lower. And I think, again, this is just a process of evolution, really, for everybody. I'm using false color way less, like significantly less, and it is more just a checking thing, especially now with the Alexa, shooting all the jobs on the Alexa. It comes with its own brand of false color, and once you get used to the monitoring system and the scenes and everything, I'm using it a lot less. Basically, the Alexa is so good that if it looks nice on the monitor, it's only going to look nicer in the grade. Like, there's no way it's going to go backwards. It's never going to look shittier than on the monitor on set. So, yeah, I use it more so when we're doing, you know, shot-to-shot matching or setting the mood for an entire room. I'll quickly flick it on and off. And generally, I'll go for just a hint. The key side, I'll go for just a hint above green. So just a little bit above green. If you can look up what the Alexa false color is. But I think the green is like 38% or something like that, or 36%. So just above that would be, you know, low 40s essentially. But that's for like your normal, if somebody's in a restaurant or, you know, having a back and forth with someone, that's where I would sort of set things. But, you know, you get used to seeing the same setups over and over again. And really, if it doesn't look bad on the monitor, it's going to look better when you see it the next time. So something to think about. And that is going to do it. Thanks again for coming out and for flicking through all the questions and the projects. And we will see you in the next live stream.